Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to our Winter Wellbeing project. This is the third and final one of our Facebook Lives. And today we are going to be focusing on food anxiety around Christmas time. So first of all, just a sort of a bit of a trigger warning. We will be mentioning eating disorders. The discussion won't be solely around eating disorders. We're going to mainly focus on general anxiety around food and how to increase, body image, self-esteem, that kind of thing. But just, as a trigger warning, we will be mentioning eating disorders in brief. So again, first of all, if you are concerned about your child or somebody that you know that may well have an eating disorder, please always speak to your GP and make sure you get the support from them. So first of all, why is Christmas such a tricky time for people who suffer with anxiety around food? Well, obviously, it's Christmas quite a stressful time anyway, and when we're under stress, quite often that can come out in different ways. And for some people, that can affect their appetite, or it can affect their sense of control. And those two things can really affect how we see food and how we manage feelings around food. So, first of all, eating disorders themselves, they quite often, most commonly occur first time in adolescence. So it's important to sort of bear that in mind if you are concerned about your child's behaviour or behaviour around food. Disordered eating is something a little bit slightly different. Disordered eating is still something to be concerned about and to watch out for, but disordered eating can cover things like obsessive calorie counting, obsessive exercise, feeling rigidity around meal times, anxiety around certain foods and that kind of thing. So obviously you can tell that, when we come to Christmas time and we have lots of stress and lots of pressure and lots of things going on, if that is something which you or your child may struggle with, then it can be quite a tricky time. So the first thing that I really want to go through is how our self-esteem can impact our relationship with food. Now, self-esteem is a really difficult one, especially when we're surrounded by lots of things like social media, which can tell us, certain things, what to eat, what not to eat, how to look, how to dress, what size we should be, lots of, conflicting information. And that can really impact self-esteem, especially in younger children or adolescents. So the first thing then, Vanessa is going to talk to us a little bit about how we can actually start to increase feelings of self-esteem around Christmas so that we can come back and use some of those strategies to help us if anxiety around food begins to flare up.
Yeah. So some self-esteem sort of boosting activities. The first one that I would suggest is positive affirmations. So there's sort of beginning of sentences that a child can fill out. So you could say, I'm a really good friend because, and get them to fill out the reason. I'm really thoughtful because my special talent is, and things like that. And it just helps the child to think of themselves in a positive way and really build their confidence in themselves. Also, getting a child to help out with maybe younger siblings or even older grandparents, just to give them a sense of responsibility, that they're valued, that they're needed. It just, again, helps increase that feeling of self-importance and I'm needed and, everyone really appreciates my help and things like that. So stuff like that can definitely help their self-esteem.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a really good point as well about the positive affirmations, because sometimes it can be easy to get hung up on, as I mentioned earlier, things like, what size should I be? How should I look? Unfortunately, that's really common at the moment with the kind of increasing use of social media, especially amongst younger children and teenagers. And so by removing that, I must look a certain way or I must be a certain weight, and replacing it with I am worthy, I am good at this, I have talents in this, I am regarded as being a good friend, I'm a good daughter, son, whatever it might be, can be really helpful because it takes that emphasis off, how we look and how we might appear to others, and it brings it back to how you are as a person. So positive affirmations can be really, really helpful. And I think as well, if you know that, which is really common. I mean, when you think about a pressured environment, possibly slightly different this year, of course, But in general, Christmas can involve lots of family. We know that family can be stressful sometimes, especially if there's people you don't perhaps often see. There might be different kinds of food, so different kind of food at the table that perhaps you're not used to, and if that's something which can stress you out, you may feel under pressure. You might have people asking you, why aren't you eating enough, or why are you not eating, why are you eating too much? And that can be really stressful as well. So it's important to remember that it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel stressed and under pressure, but it's about managing it, and you can really help your child manage these feelings. So as Vanessa said, positive affirmations and asking them to help out. So asking them to help out with younger siblings or older grandparents, whatever it might be, but also maybe asking them to help out with the food preparation. That gives them a sense of control, and it helps them to feel involved in something which may make them feel out of control at times. I would also say a really important thing is not drawing attention to what they are or aren't eating. It can be very tempting as parents sometimes to make sure that your child's eating enough, or that they're eating enough vegetables, or whatever it might be, because it comes from a good place. But sometimes drawing attention to that can actually make it a little bit worse. I think reducing stress in general, this is something Vanessa and I talked about a little bit, back in the first Facebook Live we did a few weeks ago. Reducing stress in general can have a huge impact on all different types of anxieties. So Vanessa, maybe you can talk us through a few of those kind of stress reduction techniques that we went through that that can be applied to this as well.
Yeah, definitely. So exercise is always the first one it'll just do wonders. Getting outside, going for a walk, a run, jumping on a trampoline, things like that, just again gets your endorphins going. It makes you feel good. It really can calm you down. It also gives you an opportunity to get away from whatever it is that's stressing you out. With regards to the food as well, I think if you can prepare the meal beforehand and let everyone know, but especially the person who's struggling, what food is going to be served, so they've got that in their head, they can prepare themselves for it, but also agree a portion size. So they might not want to have a certain food, or they might have food, but they might want it in a small quantity. And again, if they're prepared for that, it's just going to take away some of that anxiety, and it's going to help them prepare themselves and get ready for the meal.
Absolutely, yeah. A really good point is that being prepared can come into use for any kind of anxiety, can't it? It's something we talked about with the exam stress. Feeling prepared can reduce that anxiety, and it comes the same when it comes to sort of anxiety with food. Knowing what's going to be served, knowing what to expect from meal times can reduce some of that anxiety. And I think as well, making foods mealtime stress-free. Sometimes it can be high stress in terms of, you have to finish your plate, you have to eat this much amount of vegetables, before you can leave the table, before you can have dessert, whatever it might be. And, although that again comes from a good place, because we want our children to be healthy and we want them to eat the right kind of food, unfortunately, sometimes it can have the opposite effect. And it can actually, begin to create this feeling of stress about food in general in your child. So it's about making it fun, making meal times relaxed, not having set rules around food. Something to pick up on is that quite often we spoke about disordered eating earlier, and actually, the link between self-esteem and negative body talk, there's a huge link there. And so if you can give your child confidence around making decisions when it comes to food, that's going to increase their self-esteem as well. So I think as well that a main thing sort of to mention is that Christmas in general is stressful. So food is one kind of thing, but there are also other types of stress, to do with seeing lots of people we might not already see. Perhaps this year in particular, there might be some stress around, the coronavirus situation. So as Vanessa said before, making sure that you have that time out to get outside, maybe going and doing some exercise to get those endorphins going, and talking. I don't know about you, Vanessa, but I think sometimes just talking about how you feel can be really, really helpful as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, if your child has come and spoke to you, especially if it is about anxiety around food, it can be quite easy to sort of say, oh no, that's really silly, like it's fine, it's Christmas, like all this stuff. But I think what's really important is to listen and just listen, don't try to fix it as such. Then you can go on and offer the advice of like letting them help prepare the meal and things like that. But I think when they are speaking to you about it, just sort of like empathize and let them know that you understand.
Absolutely, yeah, that's such a good point. Listening, it's something that, especially when we're busy at Christmas, and it is a busy time, it can be all too easy, perhaps, to sort of offer a quick fix, or perhaps try and brushing it off as not being as important as it is. But I think listening is so important, especially because around Christmas there is this pressure to be really happy, and to be really kind of full of Christmas spirit or Christmas joy. And quite often, it might not be the case. So I think that that's something to remember as well, is that it's okay not to feel really, really happy at Christmas. Sometimes people don't particularly like the pressure that comes with Christmas. And actually, this year might be even more difficult in that respect, because it's very difficult to feel, full of Christmas spirit after the year that many people have had. So, as Vanessa said, listening and talking, making sure those channels of communication are open, can go a long way in easing your child's anxiety, and particularly around food, because it can be really difficult to talk about that. So if your child does open up to you, then that's a fantastic way for you to really help them, is just by listening and trying to work out what they're trying to tell you. Is there anything else, Vanessa, that you think might help? Is there anything that we can do perhaps to reduce stress in general around this period?
Possibly agreeing beforehand of maybe a room that a child can go to, or anyone can go to, if they do start to feel themselves getting overwhelmed. So even if it's not about food, just all the family, it tends to be quite noisy. Everyone's like possibly very happy. And as well, things like sensory input, like there's Christmas lights, there's decorations, everything's quite different. So agreeing a room that if it does get overwhelmed, you can go to this room, you can calm down, maybe have a few calming exercises ready in that room. So that could just even be like a jigsaw or a fidget toy or something like that, just to relax your child again. I think that could probably help quite a lot.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you mentioned that the sort of the sensory challenges, and that's a really good point. Especially children with autism, that's something which Christmas can really be difficult, because there is such a lot going on. So if your child does experience sensory challenges, then something to remember as well, but it might be really helpful, as Vanessa says, to have a quiet space, something low stimulating, and to just be able to remove themselves from that situation if they want to. And again, making sure people are aware of that, and that they're not feeling pressured over people asking, where are you going? Why aren't you enjoying your Christmas meal? Why aren't you enjoying Christmas? Why aren't you joining in the games? It's about reducing that pressure. And again, a lot of the time this comes from a good place. People want to, spend time together. They want to make sure everyone's having a good time. But it's important to remember that not everybody finds Christmas fun, and not everybody finds Christmas relaxing. So it is important to bear that in mind. So I hope that was of some use. As I said at the beginning, if you do find, or if you are concerned about sort of behaviours around food, in your child or someone else, please always look into it a little bit further and speak to a GP. It can be difficult sometimes to pick up on these things, but it's important to make sure that people get the support they need. If they do begin to sort of show quite sort of negative behaviours around food, or negative behaviours around exercise and that kind of thing. We're always here to help. So if you have any questions about anything we've spoken about today, please do be in touch with the Health and Wellbeing Department at My Online Schooling. As we said, this is our last Facebook Live of the Winter Wellbeing Project. I'm sure we will see you all again sort of when we run future projects, but we hope this has been useful and that you have enjoyed watching our mini Facebook Lives. And we hope you do have a wonderful, relaxing and stress-free Christmas. Thank you, everybody.